At family dinner, my daughter slipped me a note under the table. Call 911, it read. I trusted her instincts and it saved our lives. When I discovered what she'd figured out, I realized my own sister had been planning something unthinkable. The plan was supposed to be simple. Sunday dinner at my sister Rachel's house in Millbrook Heights, same as every month for the past 3 years. Bring dessert, let the kids play in the spacious backyard, catch up on family gossip, and drive home to Riverside before dark. It was routine, predictable, and honestly exactly what I needed after another chaotic week managing my digital marketing firm and juggling 3 kids' schedules like some kind of caffeinated circus performer. I'm Sarah Whitmore, 34 years old, divorced for exactly 2 years and 3 months now, and still figuring out how to balance being a single mom with running my own business. Not the life I'd planned when I graduated from Northwestern, with dreams of changing the world through innovative marketing campaigns, but life has a way of writing its own script, doesn't it? My ex-husband Mark lives in Cedar Grove, about 20 minutes across town, and takes the kids every other weekend. Those 48 hours give me just enough breathing room to pretend I have my life together, catch up on client work, and maybe, if I'm lucky, remember what it feels like to drink coffee while it's still hot. Mark's not a bad father, just a terrible husband. He's reliable with the kids, pays his support on time, and doesn't try to parent through me, which honestly makes him better than half the divorced dads I hear about in my mom groups. Rachel is my older sister by 5 years, married to Tom Brennan for 12 years now, with twin boys named Connor and Dylan who just turned 8 last month. She's always been the organized one in our family, the one who remembers birthdays, anniversary dates, and somehow manages to send thank you cards within a week of receiving any gift. Since our parents, Gloria and Robert Chen, moved to Clearwater, Florida 2 years ago to enjoy their retirement near the beaches, Rachel had naturally become the unofficial family coordinator for those of us still in Illinois. These monthly Sunday dinners were entirely her idea, and I'll admit, I was genuinely grateful for them, not just because Rachel's cooking rivals anything you'd find in Chicago's best restaurants, but because they gave my kids, Emma who's 10, Jake who's 7, and little Lily who's 5, a chance to maintain those important cousin relationships. Growing up, my cousins were some of my closest friends, and I wanted that same bond for my children. Rachel and Tom live in one of those picture-perfect subdivisions where every lawn looks like it's maintained by a professional landscaping crew, and every house appears to have been designed by someone who really, really loves the concept of family values. Their house is a sprawling colonial with a wraparound porch, complete with hanging flower baskets that somehow stay perfectly watered and bloomed year-round. Tom works as a senior project manager for a construction company that specializes in commercial buildings, and Rachel had been a high school math teacher before the twins were born. She'd taken some time off when they were little and now substitute teaches when she feels like it, which, given Tom's generous salary, isn't often. That particular Sunday in late September felt normal. Almost boringly, reassuringly normal. The weather was that perfect autumn temperature where you could wear a sweater without feeling overdressed. And the leaves on the massive oak trees in Rachel's neighborhood were just starting to hint at the spectacular color show that was coming. I'd spent the morning at my favorite bakery in downtown Riverside, picking up Rachel's favorite lemon bars and a selection of cookies that I knew the kids would devour within minutes of arrival. The drive to Millbrook Heights took exactly 18 minutes from my townhouse, and I'd made it so many times that I could practically navigate it in my sleep. Emma sat in the front passenger seat, which was still a novelty for her since she'd just recently grown tall enough to meet the safety requirements. She was reading one of those mystery novels she'd become obsessed with lately, something about a girl detective who solved crimes that the adults couldn't figure out. Jake and Lily were in the back seat, Jake buried in his Nintendo Switch and Lily singing some song she'd learned at school that involved a lot of repetitive lyrics about animals and colors. "Mom, are we staying for the whole afternoon?" Emma asked without looking up from her book. "Probably. Why, you have homework you forgot about." She shook her head. "No, just wondering. Sometimes Uncle Tom's friends come over, and they get really loud." I glanced at her. Emma had always been my most perceptive child, the one who picked up on social dynamics and adult tensions that sailed right over her siblings' heads. It wasn't always a blessing. Sometimes I wished she could just be a kid without analyzing every conversation and facial expression around her. If you get tired of the noise, you can always come find me, I told her. I know. She went back to her book, but I caught her glancing out the window with that thoughtful expression that usually meant her brain was working on something. When we pulled into Rachel's driveway, the scene looked exactly like every other Sunday for the past 3 years. Tom was already outside, hosing down his truck while wearing one of those polo shirts that somehow never seemed to get dirty no matter what he was doing. The twins were shooting basketballs at the hoop mounted above their garage door, their synchronized movements creating a rhythm that sounded like a percussion section warming up. Aunt Sarah, Connor called out, abandoning his basketball to run over to our car. Dylan followed close behind, because the twins rarely did anything independently. They were fraternal rather than identical, but their personalities had developed in such complementary ways that they functioned almost like two halves of the same person. My kids piled out of the car with the kind of enthusiasm they usually reserved for Christmas morning and icy rain trucks. Lily immediately attached herself to Connor, who at 8 years old was incredibly patient with her constant questions and requests to be included in whatever the big kids were doing. Jake and Dylan launched into an animated conversation about some video game they'd both been playing, their words tumbling over each other in that rapid-fire way kids have when they're excited. Perfect timing, Rachel called from the front porch, wearing an apron that somehow managed to look stylish instead of domestic. I just pulled the lasagna out of the oven. Rachel had always been beautiful in that effortless way that made me slightly jealous during our teenage years. Even now, approaching 40, she had the kind of skin that seemed to glow from within, and her auburn hair always fell in perfect waves no matter what the weather was doing. She worked out religiously at the gym Tom had built in their basement, and it showed in the way she moved with easy confidence. Need help with anything? I asked, grabbing the bakery box from my front seat. You could help me get drinks sorted out, she said, holding the front door open for the parade of children streaming into her house. Tom's planning to grill some corn later. And I think the weather's nice enough that we could eat outside if you're up for it. Rachel's house always smelled like a combination of whatever amazing thing she was cooking and the vanilla candles she kept burning in every room. The interior was decorated in that modern farmhouse style that looked cozy and sophisticated at the same time, with lots of white shiplap walls, rustic wooden accents, and family photos in matching frames. Everything had a place, and everything was always in its place, which was both impressive and slightly intimidating for someone like me whose idea of interior decorating involved making sure there were any dirty dishes visible when people came over. The kitchen was the heart of the house, a spacious room with granite countertops, stainless steel appliances, and a large island that served as both food preparation space and casual dining area. Rachel had laid out an impressive spread, the famous lasagna that had been our family's Sunday tradition since she'd perfected the recipe 5 years ago, a Caesar salad with homemade croutons, garlic bread that was still warm from the oven, and a selection of roasted vegetables that somehow made even my vegetable-averse children willing to eat their recommended daily servings. Wine? Rachel asked, already pulling a bottle of Pinot Grigio from the refrigerator. God, yes, I said, settling onto one of the high stools at the kitchen island. It's been one of those weeks. Client drama or kid drama, both, actually. Emma's teacher wants to meet about her being too advanced for the current curriculum. Jake somehow managed to lose his backpack 3 separate times this week. And Lily decided that bedtime is optional if she can convince me she needs water, or to use the bathroom, or to tell me something really important about her day. Rachel laughed, the kind of warm, understanding laugh that only comes from someone who's been in the parenting trenches herself. The twins went through a phase where they'd tag team the bedtime routine. Just when I'd get one settled, the other would start asking for stories or complaining about monsters under the bed. She poured 2 generous glasses of wine and slid one across the counter to me. The first sip was exactly what I needed, crisp, cold, and carrying just enough alcohol content to take the edge off the low-level stress that seemed to be my constant companion these days. "How's the business goin'?" Rachel asked, starting to slice the garlic bread with the kind of precision that made everything look effortless. "Really well, actually. Better than I expected when I started this whole venture. I'd launched Whitmore Digital 2 years ago, right after my divorce was finalized, with nothing but a laptop, a handful of contacts from my previous job, and the determination to prove that I could build something successful on my own. I just signed 3 new clients this month, including that boutique hotel chain I've been courting for almost a year. That's amazing, Sarah. I'm so proud of you." There was something in her tone that made me look at her more closely. Rachel had always been supportive of my business, but today there was an undercurrent I couldn't quite identify. Not jealousy, exactly, but something that felt almost like wistfulness. "Everything okay with you?" I asked. She nodded quickly, focusing intently on arranging the bread slices on a serving platter. "Of course. Just thinking about how brave you are, starting over like that. I don't think I could do it. You wouldn't need to. You and Tom have the perfect setup, right?" "Perfect." She said it in a way that didn't sound entirely convinced. But before I could ask any follow-up questions, Tom appeared in the kitchen doorway. "Ladies, how's the wine situation in here?" Tom was one of those men who seemed to take up more space than his actual physical dimensions would suggest. Not tall, maybe 5'10", but broad-shouldered and solid in the way that comes from years of physical work. He had the kind of hands that were permanently slightly stained and calloused, and a smile that was just a little too wide, lasting just a little too long. "We're well taken care of," I said, raising my glass in a small toast. "Good, good. Rachel takes care of everyone, don't you, babe?" He moved behind her and placed his hands on her shoulders, squeezing in a way that might have looked affectionate to a casual observer, but I noticed how Rachel's shoulders tensed slightly under his touch, and how she stepped away to check something in the oven just a moment sooner than seemed natural. "The corn's going to need about 15 minutes, Tom continued, seemingly oblivious to the subtle way Rachel had created distance between them. Perfect timing with the rest of the food. Through the kitchen window, I could see all 5 kids. In the backyard, the twins had set up some kind of obstacle course using lawn chairs, pool noodles, and what appeared to be every outdoor toy in their considerable collection. Emma was helping Lily navigate through the course while Jake provided enthusiastic commentary and suggestions for improvement. It was exactly the kind of scene that made these family gatherings worthwhile, kids being kids, running around in the fresh air, creating memories that would probably last long after they'd forgotten whatever minor dramas were occupying their young minds during the week. "I should probably check on them," I said, starting to get up from my stool. "They're fine," Tom said quickly. "Emma's got everything under control out there. That kid of yours is going to be running company someday." He wasn't wrong. Emma had inherited my organizational tendencies and amplified them with a natural leadership ability that sometimes surprised me. At 10 years old, she was already the kind of person other kids naturally looked to for guidance and decision-making. Teachers consistently described her as mature, responsible, and surprisingly insightful for her age. "She gets that from her mom," Rachel said, shooting me a smile that seemed genuine but somehow didn't quite reach her eyes. The next hour passed in the comfortable rhythm of family gathering. We ate Rachel's incredible lasagna while the kids chattered about school, upcoming Halloween costume plans, and a complicated ongoing saga involving who was friends with whom in their respective classrooms. Tom grilled the corn to perfection, and we moved the party outside to their deck, which overlooked a backyard that looked like something from a home and garden magazine. But throughout the meal, I found myself paying attention to small details that I'd probably overlooked during previous visits. The way Tom dominated conversations, interrupting Rachel mid-sentence to add his own commentary or correct details that didn't actually need correcting. The way Rachel seemed to anticipate his needs, refilling his beer before he asked, clearing his plate while he was still talking, adjusting the umbrella angle without being asked to block the sun from his seat. None of it was dramatic or obviously problematic. If you'd asked me to point to specific moments of concern, I wouldn't have been able to articulate anything concrete. But there was an undercurrent of tension that I was finally noticing, maybe because I'd developed my own sensitivity to controlling behavior during the final years of my marriage to Mark. Emma, meanwhile, had grown unusually quiet as the afternoon progressed. She participated in the cousin activities, helped Lily when she needed assistance, and answered direct questions from adults, but she wasn't her usual chatty, engaged self. Several times I caught her watching Tom with an expression I couldn't quite read, not fear, exactly, but something like wariness. "Mom," she said during a brief moment when the other kids were occupied with showing Tom some new trick they'd learned on the obstacle course, "can I talk to you inside for a minute?" "Sure." "Sweetheart." I followed her through the sliding glass doors into Rachel's living room, where family photos covered every available surface and everything was arranged with the kind of precision that suggested regular maintenance. Emma glanced back toward the deck, where we could hear Tom's loud laughter and the twins explaining something with great enthusiasm. "I want to go home," she said quietly. "We just got here a couple hours ago. Are you feeling okay? Stomach ache?" She shook her head. I don't like it here anymore." "What do you mean? Did something happen with Connor and Dylan?" "No, they're fine." "It's not them." She hesitated, clearly trying to figure out how to explain something that didn't have easy words. "Uncle Tom is different than he used to be." I knelt down so we were at eye level. Emma was tall for her age, but she was still my little girl, and when she was worried about something, I wanted to be able to see her face clearly. "Different? How?" "He's mean to Aunt Rachel." "Not like hitting or anything," she added quickly, probably recognizing the alarm that must have crossed my expression. "But he talks to her like she's stupid, and he gets mad when she talks to other people, out of the mouths of babes." Emma had noticed something that I'd been unconsciously picking up on but hadn't fully acknowledged. "Have you seen him be mean to her today, at lunch, when she was telling you about the new substitute teaching job?" He kept interrupting her and saying she was telling it wrong. "And when you were talking about your business?" He kept making these faces like he thought it was dumb. I hadn't noticed the faces, but I definitely remembered the interruptions. Tom had corrected Rachel's story about a difficult student she'd worked with, and he'd made several comments about how challenging it must be for me to juggle everything as a single mom, with implications that maybe I was taking on more than I could handle. "Emma, has Uncle Tom ever said anything directly to you that made you uncomfortable?" She considered this carefully. "Not exactly to me, but I heard him talking to Connor and Dylan yesterday when we were here for their birthday party. He was telling them that they needed to be tougher, that crying was for babies and girls. Dylan started crying because he said it, and Uncle Tom got really mad." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Tom had always been somewhat traditional in his views about gender roles and child-rearing, but this sounded like it went beyond traditional into the territory of emotionally harmful. 8-year-old boys should be allowed to cry when their feelings are hurt. "Did you tell Aunt Rachel about this?" Emma shook her head. "She was inside helping Grammy with the birthday cake. And Uncle Tom said it was just between us guys, and that the twins would get in trouble if they told their mom." Now I was genuinely concerned. Tom was teaching his sons to keep secrets from their mother and instilling shame about normal emotional expression. Neither of those things indicated healthy family dynamics. "Thank you for telling me this, sweetheart. You did the right thing. Can we go home now?" I wanted to say yes. Every parental instinct I had was telling me to gather my kids, make polite excuses, and get out of there. But I also felt a responsibility to Rachel. If Tom was becoming increasingly controlling or emotionally abusive, she might need support from her family. Leaving abruptly could actually make things worse for her. "Let's stay a little bit longer," I said carefully. "But I want you to stay close to me, okay? And if anything makes you uncomfortable, you come find me immediately." Emma nodded, looking relieved that I'd taken her concerns seriously. We rejoined the group on the deck, where Tom was regaling everyone with a story about some project at work that involved difficult clients and unreasonable deadlines. He was animated and charming, the kind of storyteller who could make even mundane workplace drama sound entertaining. But now that Emma had pointed it out, I noticed how he seemed to expect everyone's complete attention, and how he looked irritated when Lily started asking Rachel a question during his narrative. "Lily," Tom said, his voice carrying just enough edge to make everyone stop what they were doing, "your aunt is trying to listen to my story." Lily, who was 5 and had no filter, looked at him with genuine confusion. "But I was asking Aunt Rachel about the kitty." "The kitty can wait," Tom said, and while his tone was controlled, there was something underneath it that made me understand why Emma had wanted to leave. Rachel immediately scooped Lily onto her lap. "What about the kitty, sweetheart? I just wanted to know if your kitty was hiding because I haven't seen her today." "Princess is probably taking a nap somewhere," Rachel said, smoothing Lily's hair. "Cats sleep a lot during the day." Tom's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. I got the impression that he didn't appreciate being interrupted, even by a 5-year-old asking an innocent question about the family cat. The rest of the afternoon continued in the same vein. Tom dominated conversations, made subtle digs at Rachel's contributions to discussions, and seemed to expect everyone to revolve around his schedule and preferences. When Dylan got tired and wanted to go inside to rest, Tom made comments about the boy being soft and needing to toughen up. When Connor asked Rachel to help him with something, Tom redirected the request to himself, saying boys should ask their father for help, not their mother. By the time we were cleaning up from dinner, I was ready to support Emma's request to leave, but as I was helping Rachel carry dishes into the kitchen, she grabbed my arm gently. "Sarah, can I talk to you for a minute?" We stood at the kitchen sink, running water over plates and speaking in low voices while Tom supervised the kids' cleanup of the backyard games. "Is everything okay, Rach? You seem, I don't know, stressed." She was quiet for a long moment, scrubbing a plate that was already clean. "Things with Tom have been challenging lately." "Challenging how?" "He's been really critical about everything I do, the way I talk to the twins, how I spend money, who I spend time with. Last week he got upset because I had coffee with my friend Jessica, said I was neglecting my family responsibilities." My heart sank. This was sounding more and more like the beginning stages of an abusive relationship, where the controlling partner gradually isolates their victim from friends and support systems. "Rachel, that's not okay. You should be able to have coffee with your friends." "I know. I think I know. But he makes these arguments that sound logical when he's saying them. Like maybe I am being selfish, or maybe I'm not thinking about what's best for the boys." This was textbook manipulation, making the victim question their own judgment and instincts. "Have you talked to anyone else about this, Mom and Dad, or a counselor?" She shook her head quickly. "Tom doesn't believe in therapy, says it's for people who can't solve their own problems. And I haven't told Mom and Dad because I don't know. I guess I keep thinking things will get better." "Rachel, they don't get better on their own." This kind of behavior typically escalates. Before she could respond, Tom appeared in the kitchen doorway. "What are you ladies plotting in here?" His tone was light, joking, but there was something in his eyes that suggested he didn't appreciate being excluded from their conversation. "Just discussing the best way to store leftover lasagna," Rachel said smoothly, but I noticed how quickly she stepped away from me and busied herself with loading the dishwasher. "Well, don't let me interrupt," Tom said, but he made no move to leave. Instead, he leaned against the doorframe, effectively blocking the exit and making it clear that he intended to supervise the remainder of our conversation. I felt Emma appear at my elbow before I saw her. She'd apparently come inside looking for me, and now she was standing very still, looking back and forth between the 3 adults with that perceptive expression that told me she was reading the tension in the room. "Mom," she said quietly, "Lily's ready to go home." It wasn't true. I could hear Lily laughing outside with her cousins, but Emma was giving me an excuse to extract us from an increasingly uncomfortable situation. "Of course," I said. "Let me get our things together." As I gathered purses and jackets and started calling my kids in from the backyard, I felt Tom watching every move. There was something predatory about his attention, like he was cataloging potential threats to his control over the household. The goodbyes were awkward, in a way they'd never been before. Rachel hugged me tightly, holding on just a moment longer than usual. Tom shook my hand with his too firm grip and reminded me, unnecessarily, that they'd see us next month for the October dinner. "Thanks for having us," I said, making sure my voice sounded normal and grateful. Dinner was incredible, as always. "Rachel's a great cook," Tom agreed, putting his arm around his wife's shoulders in a gesture that looked possessive rather than affectionate, among her many talents. In the car, driving home through the early evening darkness, Emma sat quietly in the passenger seat while Jake and Lily compared notes about their favorite parts of the day. They'd had fun, which was the point of these gatherings, and I didn't want to spoil that with my growing concerns about Uncle Tom's behavior. But Emma, perceptive as always, seemed to understand that something significant had shifted. "Mom," she said as we pulled into our driveway, "I don't think we should go back there for a while." I looked at her in the glow of our front porch light, this wise, intuitive child who saw things that adults often missed or chose to ignore. "Why do you say that, sweetheart?" "Because Uncle Tom is getting worse, and Aunt Rachel looks scared." That night, after all three kids were finally asleep, I sat in my living room with a cup of tea and tried to decide what to do with the information Emma had given me. I couldn't unhear the things she'd told me about Tom's comments to the twins, and I couldn't unsee the way Rachel had seemed to shrink in her husband's presence. But I also knew that intervening in other people's marriages was complicated, especially when the victim wasn't ready to acknowledge that they needed help. Pushing too hard could backfire and actually put Rachel in more danger. I decided to start by doing some research about emotional abuse and controlling relationships, so I'd be better equipped to recognize warning signs and know how to offer support when Rachel was ready to accept it. What I didn't know was that by the time our next family dinner rolled around, Emma's instincts about danger would prove to be more accurate than I could have imagined. 3 weeks later, Rachel called to invite us for the October dinner. Her voice sounded strained, almost robotic, like she was reading from a script. "Tom's really excited about this one," she said. "He's planning something special for the kids." Something in her tone made my stomach tighten. "What kind of special?" "Oh, you know Tom. He likes to surprise everyone." There was a long pause. "Sarah, you'll bring the kids, right? All 3 of them?" Tom specifically asked about Emma. That last part sent a chill down my spine. Why would Tom specifically ask about my 10-year-old daughter? "Of course we'll be there," I said, though every instinct was screaming at me to decline. The night before the dinner, Emma came to my room around midnight. She'd been having trouble sleeping lately, and I found her standing in my doorway with tears in her eyes. "Mom, I don't want to go tomorrow." I pulled back my covers and patted the bed beside me. "Come here, sweetheart. Tell me what's wrong." She climbed in and curled up against my side, something she hadn't done in months. "I keep having bad dreams about Uncle Tom. In the dreams, he's really angry, and Aunt Rachel is crying." "Emma, they're just dreams. Sometimes our minds worry about things even when we're sleeping." "But what if they're not just dreams? What if something bad is going to happen?" I held her tighter, wishing I could dismiss her fears as childhood imagination. But Emma's intuition had been right about Tom's behavior before. "Tell you what, if anything makes you uncomfortable tomorrow, anything at all, you come find me immediately, okay?" She nodded against my shoulder. "Promise you won't leave me alone with him?" "I promise." The next evening, as we drove to Rachel's house, the autumn air felt different, heavier somehow. The leaves that had been beautiful just weeks before now looked brittle and dying. Even Jake and Lily seemed subdued in the back seat, their usual pre-dinner excitement replaced by an unusual quiet. When we pulled into the driveway, I noticed Tom's truck was gone. Rachel met us at the door, and immediately I could see something was wrong. She had dark circles under her eyes, and there was a nervous energy about her that set me on edge. "Where's Tom?" I asked as we stepped inside. "He had to run an errand. He'll be back soon." She avoided eye contact. "Why don't you kids go play in the living room while your mom and I finish dinner?" But Emma stayed close to my side, her small hand gripping mine tightly. She'd kept her promise to stay near me, and I was grateful for it. As Rachel bustled around the kitchen, I watched her carefully. Her movements were jerky, anxious. She dropped a spoon twice and apologized profusely. Both times, as if dropping kitchen utensils was some kind of serious offense. "Rachel, what's going on? You seem really stressed." She stopped what she was doing and looked at me with eyes that held too much fear for a simple family dinner. "Sarah, if something happens tonight, if anything feels wrong, just take the kids and leave. Don't ask questions, don't try to help me, just go." Before I could respond, we heard Tom's truck in the driveway.